Hello everyone and welcome to a slide deck which I originally presented in January at Web Analytics Wednesday. So what's this all about, this deck? It's about session replay tools or screen recording tools that are out there on the market, and the information here is really to try and help you get the most out of them and give you some sensible advice about the kinds of tools that you pick, what the most useful features are from an optimizer's point of view, and how you can actually tap out the best data from these products that will actually drive a lot of insight in your work. So let me get started. Just a bit of background on me. I've been optimizing stuff for a long time, since 1999. I've done a lot of UX work to start with, then analytics work. Over the last 10 or 11 years, I've mainly been doing split testing at large scale and trying to figure out how to make this work. So there are 4 questions that I wanted to answer in this session that have been posed to me, and these are: what are these tools? What's session replay mean? How does it work? What are we talking about? And more importantly, what stuff do they do for us as optimizers? How can they actually add value to my work in a way that other tools and analytics data alone cannot do? And what is the stuff sort of in primary kind of sorted order of importance that optimizers most get value out of in these products? So I'm going to give you a bit of advice and kind of wrap it up with a summary of what you should be looking for in one of these packages, and more importantly, what you can expect to get out of it. So the session replay tools in the market, what are these session replay tools that I'm talking about? Well, first of all, giving them a name of a session replay tool doesn't really seem right, because actually a lot of them have this core functionality, but they also have other features on top. So all of these tools in the market can have session recordings built in that take visitor recordings, but quite a few of them have attention, click and scroll maps, and also polling, surveys, feedback and voice the customer functionality. There are even some of the tools that also include funnel and segmentation tools and form analytics too. So you're not just buying one tool here. In a lot of cases it may have some core functionality, but some of the add-on stuff is kind of useful and some of it's less useful, and that's what I'm going to show you today. What's the stuff that really matters and what's kind of frippery? Well, who should be on your list here? Well, certainly these top 4: Decibel Insight, Hotjar and Spectlet and SessionCam. Different pricing models, different starting points. There's everything really that you would need from a small startup to a large kind of enterprise class software license. All of these on here are ones that get mentioned to me by other optimizers or I've used personally. There's even a free version right now that Yandex make. I'm not sure about the wisdom of sending data to Russia at the moment, but I've included the link. It is genuinely free and will give you stuff if you don't have budget. So there is no excuse. These tools are within everybody's reach, even small startups. And it's actually a piece of criminal neglect if you're not using these, mainly because it will find you such easy stuff, you doofus. So if you're not using these, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. So why don't you go and find out? Let's do it. So this is a feeling I'm often having in meetings where people are discussing what they're going to optimize, or discussing what they're planning in terms of A/B testing, or indeed what they think the problem is in the first place. And I just feel that these meetings need a considerable amount less bullshit about the whole process, because what people are doing is essentially allowing their ego and opinions to cloud the whole design process. And the problem with that is that you need to actually fill this vacuum with useful information from customers, quantitative and qualitative insights that are actually going to drive stuff that you can turn into A/B tests, that you can actually do useful things with, stuff that's actionable, it's easy to explain to people, and you can do it very quickly and very easily. So what stuff do these tools do? And basically, the first part of this is the session recording. And really, at the end of the day, what these are doing is making an abstracted recording of people's mouse movements around on the screen. And these are essentially pulled from the user's session and reconstructed into a recording. It's not actually a video recording of what people are doing. It's as faithful a rendering as is possible without storing high quality video. And they've got clever ways of doing it. But basically what you get is some real pros here, which is you get real video recordings of people using the site. The fidelity of these vary in a lot of the recording tools. Some of them you have to instrument and send data to them. Some of them will pretty much record everything that's on the page. There are trade-offs here in performance terms for the different approaches. So that's something I'll come back to later. But what these session recording tools will give you is a qualitative layer on the data. It's great knowing how big a problem is or where people drop out in a funnel. You know, you can quantify it and you can kind of triangulate its location, but you're missing one really important thing. Why? Why are they doing that? What is the evidence that would support any hypothesis that you can come up with that would help you build a decent A/B test, or just go ahead and optimize that part of the process? So these are very useful for spotting things that are not always evident in other tools and are not always exposed even in your analytics tools. So problems with forms, validation, submission, when people have annoyance or friction, they don't understand what they're filling in, or they don't want to give you information because you haven't explained why you're asking for it and what you're going to do with it. But the great thing about this stuff is also that you can push code live on your site. And you can set it up so that, 5 or 10 minutes later, you can be looking at high fidelity recordings of people using that widget. So rather than holding off until you think you've tested it perfectly, you can get some MVP product out there, whether it's a whole page, a whole process. We'll get stuff live and you can actually get some feedback on it fairly quickly. So you can get a little bit more velocity there if you have the cojones to put something live and then get instantaneous or near real-time feedback on what's actually happening when users encounter it. It certainly helps to have a look at stuff that you put live if you're really worried about it, and this gives you an additional safety net. There are some downsides here. It's not a substitute for form analytics. Please don't think that screen recordings are going to completely help you out of a hole here. They're a companion, they go together, it's not a substitute. It's really hard in some of these tools to filter or segment thousands and thousands of recordings down to a set that you want. But even still, I might want to look at 300 or 400 people that failed in a checkout funnel before I feel I've got a real flavor for some of the patterns that are developing. I want a really decent sample because I'm not looking for the kind of problems that are there in usability tests. I'm looking for more stuff that's in the wild, like validation issues that I didn't expect or stuff that didn't come up in the test. So usability testing, yes, will uncover a lot of defects in the product, but there are also parts of the user interface that cannot be tested except at scale in the wild. So a great example here is you might be able to design a fantastic postcode lookup system, right? And it's great and everyone can use it and you test it out in the lab and it's fine. But when you put it out into the real world, you find you've done something wrong with the postcode system, right? And the data doesn't work. So a whole chunk of addresses don't get looked up. You're never going to find that in a lab, right? You have to have different techniques for these different things. And you're not necessarily going to uncover problems that are to do with the types of and range of data that people submit out there at large scales of visitors. So one final thing to mention here, you're going to get a hit on performance. If you're squirting recordings up to a server, there's code that has to go in the browser that basically has to coordinate sending this data. And some of it will be written well and some of it will be written badly, So it's easy to add this stuff and you think, great, this is getting all these recordings right now, but you've just tied a brick round the bollocks of the browser of the person who's visiting your site. Now, if the value that you're getting out of the recordings is higher than the penalty that you're imposing on people by recording them, then that's great. But that means you shouldn't necessarily leave recordings on all the time unless you're prepared to take the business hit of that decision. Let's say it depresses conversion 10%. If you have these screen recordings on all the time, that would be a sensible thing to know about before you actually commit to turning them on 100%. So be very careful about site performance here. The tools work differently. Some of them are good at lazy writing things in the background, which is fantastic on mobile, but some of them are not well designed in performance terms. So just be really careful here. It is a hit, it will slow the browser down, and therefore it will actually impact your conversion rate by just running this. A final one. It's always an abstraction of reality. This isn't an actual recording, it's a simulation of a recording. So just treat it as that and be careful. Some tips from me here then to do with session recording. Record only when you need to. Some people have it on all the time and they collect every customer recording. That can be handy if you're using this as a support tool, but I'm not tending to use it as a support tool. I mainly use it tactically, so I might turn it on for a bunch of landing pages, collect several hundred recordings, play them all back at high speed, 5 or 10 times normal human kind of fill out rates and forms. I can slow it down and stop it if I spot anything, but I'm also not going to die from boredom either watching all of these. So I can easily get through several hundred recordings in an afternoon. If you want to figure out the performance impact, well, you can use the Google Analytics DOM timings report to look at the impact on these pages as you run with and without this code added. And these are real user timings. So if it's really causing your mobile performance to suck when you start getting recordings on your mobile site, you need to be aware of that before you just willy-nilly roll it out everywhere, because it'll probably run great in your office. Yeah, it seems to run fine here. Oh, we're getting recordings and we're all on, a wired Ethernet connection. Isn't that amazing? And then you put it out on a 3G connection in a bad data spot and you find that the session recording turns an experience that was maybe a bit slow into one that's unusable. So be very careful what you're doing there. Make sure that the tool records not just mouse movements, but it also caters for touch, swipe, zoom, and other gestural gestures that people make on touch devices. And also make sure that any tool that you buy has the right device groupings, so it can sensibly separate devices either by category like desktop, mobile, tablet, or it can do it by the breakpoints or the resolutions in your site. If you've got a responsive site that looks 5 different ways for people, then you need to be able to look at the data 5 different ways in your session replay tool, because the experiences are vastly different. I mean, you can't just sort of average out the mobile recordings and the tablet recordings on mobiles and tablets that are incredibly different in size and layout. It's just really stupid and it will bias your data. Filtering's pretty vital here. People may have a great recording tool and they might have a wonderful list of recordings in there, but if you can't filter these and filter them by appropriate dimensions, if you can't winnow down the number of recordings you're looking at to a specific place, saying, I want to know all the people who dropped out between step 3 and step 4 in the checkout and failed to check out, I want to see the people who didn't get through the process. Or I want to narrow down 5 groups of landing pages that are all the same template but have slightly different names. If I've got shitty filtering of session recordings, it's just a shitty tool, right? So this is really important. It's just a core basic functionality, has to be there in the tools. Some of them are good, some of them are terrible. There's another thing that's useful in here, which is JavaScript errors, browser and device problems, and all of these tools can help you mine for large bugs in your device experiences, so please use them. It's worth a lot of money. Here's a good example of, where something would have been picked up by session recording. Here's an airline sending me the ticket number that I have to paste into their website in order to actually check into my flight, except, you know, somewhere in their wisdom, they've decided to put a space in the ticket number, which their own bloody website doesn't accept. So 20 years, 20, 30 years of computer design, and it's come to this, that we cannot actually notice that somebody's got a space in there and strip it out. I mean, I come across this kind of stuff all the time, you know. I mean, guys, you know, this isn't coding. This is pain. This is sand in the Vaseline, broken glass thrown in the eyes of your customers. Stop doing it. But if nobody complains about it, and a lot of people don't complain. I've spoken to and run large call center operations, and I've found that people will report problems in a tiny amount, even when it's a massive problem. So when I've broken sites before so that they don't work on huge browser audiences, the amount of people that call up is very, very small, actually. And I found that unless we monitor for those things, we just don't discover them. We can't rely upon customers as our safety net. We have to test things and we have to find out what's broken. It's simply not good enough to rely upon them. And as somebody quipped to me once, if we get 2 or 3 people call up, it's an effing disaster. And if nobody calls up, that doesn't mean anything. It's probably still broken. Anyway, there's another part to this, which is if you're actually using these tools in your analytics data to model the device experiences, split by device category and then into the various sub-levels and then into the individual devices, you can figure out which stuff here is and isn't working. You can find out the stuff, yeah, it's converting fine, no bother. All those browsers, yeah, they're fine. But look at these ones. These are really bad. These are like half the conversion rate. What's wrong? We don't know, but we can find out. And everybody's got a hole in their device experience. These companies basically had multi-million-pound holes on a monthly basis. It's not an annual basis. This is every month they're hemorrhaging more lost revenue than their entire IT department budget for the year in 4 out of the 5 cases here. Yet the total developer time to fix all these bugs that was worth £84 million a year was less than 5 days. So the total cost of that, £8,000, that's 91,150% ROI. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't have anything that's as easy to find as that in websites. And you'll find an article on Medium that explains all of this and how to find this stuff yourself. These are the tools that we actually use to do the testing, and it means that we don't need to own these devices. We can actually rent them out from the cloud and do all the work required to figure out why the low converting browsers and devices are broken. Number 2 in the arsenal of kind of features in these tool sets are heat, scroll and click maps. You know, very kind of useful, but for slightly different things. Let me explain. Scroll maps will tell you how far people are scrolling down a page. You know, how far do they kind of get? Where's the waterline of attention? And you can use this with analytics data in combination, but, you know, analyze and basically optimize read and scrolling behavior. If you get problems where people aren't scrolling on your pages, it could just be the design. I've seen it happen a lot where the fold line, and don't tell me the fold line doesn't exist. It does. So get over yourself, okay? The fold line does exist. It's just in different places and different viewports and different designs and has different impacts depending whether it falls in a piece of clear color space, white space, solid color. If you just drop it in the middle of that space in a design and say, that's my viewport, there are no visual cues showing you can scroll. Newspapers, you know, if you have a newspaper folded and the text goes over that fold line, you can actually see that it flows below and you can follow it and turn the paper over, right? But sometimes you think the fold line is where you put it on your monitor in your office when you're showing it to your team, right? But that's not how customers see it. So the fold line is there. It just varies depending on the viewport of the device being used. So, you know, you got to be careful here as well, depending on how the tools report this stuff out. If they're seeing different grid layouts here, then these tools could be approximating the scroll, okay? And they might be scrolling through entirely different sections. So you really need to segment this stuff by device class. And any tools that involve scroll maps really need filtering in segments to bring out the power of these as an exploration and discovery tool. So my tips: split by device experience category. Make sure you can split by viewport or resolution. If you can, integrate your own segmentation, so stuff about your customers, high spenders, low spenders, new customers, customers who've been with you for a year, particular persona groups, anything you've got, you can slice and dice it. Having a tool you can integrate that with is going to be much better. It's good for optimizing these bottlenecks and flow problems that people introduce into long page design. Sometimes they put them in, they think, oh, that should have worked, people should have scrolled down. Possibly a few simple things that you can pick up from these diagrams. But the main thing is, it allows you to kind of focus some optimization and actually where the eyeball attention is, rather than just looking at the design and assuming you know where that attention is. Click maps, well, it helps you see where people click, but the most important thing that it tells you is where people click that isn't clickable. So if you've got an element that looks like it's really interesting, call to action, but it's not clickable, then you need to darn well make it clickable, or you need to fix the design problem, the kind of affordance that makes people think it's clickable. So I'd rather use Google Analytics event tracking to get the stuff that I want, but these can look nice, but I'm just saying there's not a lot of depth to it, so that's the only tips. Look for non-clickable areas with high volumes of clicks. Attention maps, these are an interesting one. I really don't, there are various algorithmic tools out there that attempt to compute eye gaze, right, from mouse movement. And that's great because there is a correlation between mouse movement and where the attention is on the page. It just isn't very good. But the other problem is there's a very strong correlation between behavior when people are showing frustration with moving the mouse around, right? So basically you've got two kind of, drivers of the data that you might be seeing here. So to lump them together and average them would be to misinterpret them. Okay, so when you wheel around on the page, or you can move from side to side, or shaking side to side or up or down, these are all interesting behaviors, but they don't actually tell me where the eye is looking, because the eye is getting frustrated at something else in the page. It's just a secondary mouse sort of behavior is coming from that. It's interesting, but it's not as useful as the other two as far as I'm concerned in some ways. Voice of customer, possibly, this whole area of voice of customer tools, polls, surveys is possibly one of the most undervalued parts of these tools. If only most users of them would just ask people questions that come onto the page. If you owned a retail store and you sat in there and you watch people come in, look around, and then exit straight away, I mean, you would get tired of this after a few days of not having any customers come in. You would eventually, I would hope, go and ask these people, at least any decent optimizer would. So what was it, sir? Was it something you couldn't find? Are you looking for something? Anything I can help you with? Just engaging and asking questions might give you a clue. All these people might be after wardrobes, but all your wardrobes are upstairs. You have no signs about wardrobes. Nobody can tell you sell wardrobes. So, you can sit there on your chair wondering why people aren't coming in, or you can get off your butt and go and ask them some questions that will actually elicit a response. So if you don't know what to do with a page or process or step or widget or some badly designed piece of stuff on your site, why not just ask the customers, the visitors? So polls are one of the easiest ways to remove bullshit from your organization. Cherished notions, assumptions, beliefs that have no basis in fact, stuff that people believe that there's no evidence behind. It's just, Bob said that 5 years ago and now everyone says it. It's just BS. So, while surveys can often turn into a bun fight about how many questions everyone can sling in that they can get so little value from, Snap polls, landing pages, triggers, things happening, segments of people, behaviours that people do or don't have are the best things. Ask people who walk out the door of your shop, why are you leaving, right? Don't ask everybody who comes in, but you can put specific conditions on it. So, and one final tip here, don't be afraid to ask open-ended questions. I would say start with trying to categorize people and then iterate from that. So you might ask them a question saying, what motivated you to come to our site today? And you might think, they're going to say that they're looking at tools. But actually, 90% of them say, I'm just like comparing different tools from different vendors, and you sort of think, I'll change the poll. So what I'll do is, on the poll, say, are you comparing tools from other vendors now, right? So I now actually get the real data value from people about what they're actually after on the page, because give me a clue, so I iterate the test. But here's an even better one. What if they answer with that option and say, yeah, I'm comparing other tools? Well, you could pop open an open-ended box that says, so which tools are you looking at today? Great. So they've just told you all of their competitors are going nosing around looking at. So a combination of judicious questions to kind of put people into different buckets or answer burning questions that you've got are really important. Having open-ended questions that allow people to volunteer information that you hadn't expected is good. But if you're wanting concrete answers, just be careful about what you're looking for, qual and quant, right? If you want a quant answer, then don't have an open box, right? If you want a qualitative answer, like, how did you feel about that? How did it go? What was the one thing that stopped you? What did you like most? Any details that you want to get or any emotion that you want to get, use that method. But if you want an answer as in which is the best option, why are they here, what kind of customer are they, then you need to be asking specifics. One tip when you're asking polls or surveys, if you put an other option on there and you get less than 4% of people putting stuff into other, I would say that's pretty good, But if everybody puts their answer in other, that means the rest of your questions are wrong and you need to go and redraw them, and you look through all the other responses and you think, oh my god, I forgot to put that one in. Yeah, of course, yeah. So remember, polls, surveys, iterate them, right? Because you'll never get them right first. Sometimes at Love Film it would take me up to 15, 16 tries when I was starting out to get a survey that my boss was happy with. I learnt a lot from that. Sweat it. It's 99% perspiration and 1% arguing about the questions is probably about the right balance. It's a lot of work to get right. Some really important stuff here. You can ask for a task gap survey to be installed on your site. Imagine asking everyone who came to the site, did you get your stuff done that you came to do today? It's a great question. Did you get your stuff done? No, I didn't. I'm really annoyed. I came to find this and I couldn't find it. It's valuable information. What is the air gap between the service you think you're given on your site, what you're telling people you do, and the service that they're actually, parsing from your site? What's their interpretation of what you do? And the gap between those two is where an opportunity lies. So how would you rate your site experience today? Oh, I thought it was quite good. Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was quite easy to use. Were you able to complete the purpose of your visit today? No, not at all. And if no, why were you not able to? Well, I searched around the site. I tried searching for it in the search box and I just couldn't find it. So I assume you guys don't sell it. And if it was a yes to that question, since you were able to accomplish your task, what was the thing that you really liked? What really stuck out for you? So there are all sorts of surveys here, not just like big, detailed, massive 30-question surveys going out to the entire customer base. There's things like this, a tasks gap survey, general site feedback, when people abandon a funnel, when people go to exit the site, regular NPS and customer satisfaction surveys, and then these landing page polls, these little tactical interventions to get you an answer to a question that will help you redesign the page. So knowing that people are evaluating different packages on that landing page means that you can go and redraw the page around that primary requirement. That is their primary task that they're arriving at the page with. Therefore, Why would you design it around what your colleagues think? Who cares? It's about what the customers are actually trying to accomplish. And one last one, a really great tip, on thank you page after they've paid and everything, just ask them, was there one thing that nearly stopped you from purchasing, buying, signing up today? Ask them, what was it? Yeah, it was really annoying. Every time I put the credit card in, it just kept, coming up with an error message. It was really irritating, but I really wanted to buy this, so I kept trying and I got through. It's really interesting because those people that nearly didn't buy will probably be giving you reasons that also pushed a lot of people who were very close to buying over into the abandonment pile. So it's a way of mining the abandonment pile using existing customers that actually purchased. If you've got integration with Google Analytics, great. If it integrates with your A/B testing tool, another tick. And if it has decent segmentation capabilities, even better. When you're buying the tool, ask what methods it supports, and see in these session replay tools generally, talk to customers who are actually using the part of the tool you're going to be using. So if you're going to use session replay every week and polls to do stuff on your site, then you need to find a customer, a reference customer with this vendor who does this stuff every week like you do. Don't ask a marketing person if you're a UX person, right? Try and find someone with a similar role and activity profile with the tools, and then ask them how it was they used it. Did they actually use the tool? Do they use it every week? What do they get out of it? If they're not using it, why not? It's great. They might own the license, but it's actually the usage and the story they tell me of how they use the data. It tells me how good the tool is. So talk to people who've used it. Don't believe all the marketing and everything. You've got to dig into this. Caveat emptor. At the end of this deck, there's a list of qualitative tools that you will find useful to sort of join up with this stuff. Have a look at usabilityhub.com, and some of the stuff I've been talking about in this section has been from my good friend Mikael Ogard, who you can follow on Twitter as @ContentVerve. So, one really important thing about NPS, I was explaining to someone the other day how we went about crushing the competition at Love Film. And this was really quite a vital piece of learning for us early on in our growth stage. Just one second. One of the things that we really struggled with was to try and figure out how could we find out what our competitors were good at, better than us, and what things were they worse at? What were their strengths and weaknesses? Most importantly, could we actually reverse engineer the elements that they were using to delight their customers and steal all of their best ideas and adopt them ourselves? Could we work out what actually made people happier or less happy with their service? Well, what we did is we run regular customer sat surveys with all of our competitors' customers. We went to a research agency, GfK. We asked them and a couple of other companies over that entire period, and we asked them to basically collect us a sample of 1,000 surveys from each brand, and we gave them our brand and several other brands. So they collected NPS data and service metrics. Well, if you had a support query, how good were they at answering your question first time? How good were they at answering your question quickly? Was the quality of the films good? There are all these service metrics that underpinned where the NPS score was coming from. They were the segmentation drivers that made up your NPS score, right? So if we can figure out which ones of those push the needle more than others, we can pile more investment into them. This is where linear regression comes to help us. So here's one example. I looked at data here about our own customer services and figured out the speed of email response basically really didn't make that much difference. It was kind of surprising that giving a super fast email response to someone's question didn't actually make them more delighted. It turns out their expectation is actually kind of for a 4 or 5 hour response time. You're kind of delighting them, but are you really delighting them? Is this the right metric? when I looked at this one, question answered first time, I could see that basically the more likely, there was a huge correlation between the high rating on getting your question answered first time and a higher NPS score. Wow, that's interesting. That gradient tells me that if I answer the question first time, put effort into that, it's going to be much more rewarding for pushing the NPS score and therefore the delight behind it. So we can use these kind of techniques. You can mine your competitors' customers' opinions and feelings about the product and the ratings of it to actually work out which areas they're weak in. You can then spend money on stuff that's going to shift the needle for you and avoid spending on things that isn't really going to shift it very much at all. That's efficient. It's efficient competition. It's a smarter way of doing things. And it all comes from surveys. So there you go. A lot of these tools have funnel and journey optimization stuff built into them. My personal feeling is, that there's an awful lot to cover in them. I'm not sure they're that useful to me. I've got funnel tools in Google Analytics. I can pretty much put together any model that I want. I'd rather have the tool data in Google Analytics to do my analysis with the data from the session replay and voice of customer tool. The data layer collected in some of these tools is probably not as rich as your analytics. You just need to merge the two data sets. You might decide you want to have it all in the tool. That's your choice, but I'm just saying, me personally, Google Analytics is the place that I do this. Form analytics are really important. If you're asking people on a phone and you just said phone number, right, and you were going to say what? You just said phone number. And then you said, why do you need my phone number? Error, no phone number provided. You'd be like, slam, right? If this happened in real life during a conversation, you would know to fix it. You would know there was something wrong. So if you'd notice it on a phone call, why are you not measuring this stuff on a website? So form analytics is vital for maximizing yield of your forms. You need to know where people are getting stuck on fields, spending too much time, getting a lot of errors, re-entering data, misinterpreting things. Where's the friction at a field level on the page? And one example here is phone number. A lot of people get dropouts on this field, and they ask me why, and I look at the page and I see that they've given no reason for the phone number. So they don't say, we need your phone number for this, or we're not going to call you zillions of times a day, or sell your phone number to a PPI insurance company or claims insurance company. It's just ridiculous. So by actually, there's an experiment that Cialdini mentioned where if you go up to the head of a photocopier line and you actually ask to get in and give a reason like, oh, my car's on a meter outside, I've only got 5 minutes left, I have to go to a doctor's appointment shortly, could you just sneak in, make a couple of copies? I've got to rush for pick my son up from school, right? All great reasons. If you ask then and give a reason, then you will get in front of the queue, right? So if you tell people why they need your phone number, then they will give it to you. So if you can explain a credible story like, this is so we can call you in case there's a problem delivering your order, or this is so we can keep you up to date by SMS on exactly when your package is going to be delivered. Yes, you've changed it from give me your personal data, you bastard, to we want to give you something useful in exchange for your phone number. It is a transaction. I give something to you, you give something to me. And if you don't give me information or any reason to give you my phone number, it's a valueless transaction. It feels like you're shafting me. Stop doing it. So what do optimizers find most useful in this stuff? Well, here are the top 6 really. Device experiences is down at the bottom here mainly because these tools don't really help that much with it until it gets to the kind of final testing the suspect devices and browsers that look bad in your analytics data. But really, top of here is high fidelity recordings that are segmentable and filterable. You've got nice reporting. You've got rich ways of slicing and dicing that data. Very important. Secondly, being able to get tactical insights with these tools to ask questions of people, to focus in on small areas, to look at particular template groups or funnel steps, being able to pull these out, also vital. Too few people use polls here. They're absolutely brilliant. If you've got BS in your office, then just ask a customer. If people don't know about a page or what customers want or what types of customers are there, stop bullshitting each other and jerking your schlongs, right? Meetings about this stuff where you all tell lies to each other about what you think is really happening on the website, they're just wasting everybody's time. Stop doing it. Inject it with real customer data. Form analytics is heavily underutilized, and yet it's rich in money. If you've ever read any of Luke Wroblewski's work, or you've actually looked at any session replay recordings, you will understand exactly what I mean. There are problems there that people can't see at the visual layer of the website. They look at it and they say, I can't see anything wrong with this form. But that's because they're not actually looking at it through the interaction lens of a real customer. You just can't see it. You need to record it and measure it and pull it out and prioritize it. And validation and submission errors in forms are one of the largest drivers of abandonment. In most cases, they actually drive a lot of people right out the funnel. One or more errors happening. It's terrible. You should avoid errors at all costs. You should filter, fix, tweak, accept the data. Google doesn't say you can't spell. It offers you the best match. It says, I know you can't spell, so that's why I've searched for this phrase for you. Think like Google when it comes to this stuff. Try not to show an error because it will make people abandon. Try to invisibly fix the error so that nobody sees anything. It's lovely that way. The first time that those red error messages come up on the page, it causes users anxiety. They really hate it, and people often anticipate it going to happen when they press the submit button. Some anxiety is built up that it's all going to go a sea of red when they press that button. So you've got a lot to do about reassuring people, giving them inline validation, doing it as baby steps, and not throwing sand in their face when they don't put in the data perfectly the way you'd like it from a programming point of view. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to actually make a website run and convert. Like I said, last but not least, device experiences are a lot of money. So the summary here is, who cares if your conversion rate is 5%? Most people spend all of their effort, or nearly all of their effort, analysing, reporting on, and going into mind numbing detail about that 5% and what's happened to them, right? They'll take care of themselves, right? Worry about the 95%. Why are they not converting? Do you actually know? If you don't know the answer to that question, it's difficult to solve a problem you don't understand. So it's just crazy. You need this data before you can actually solve it. Don't kid yourself that you know enough to solve it without the data. Otherwise, you end up in this situation. It's just basically, everyone's kind of looking in their crystal balls at a meeting and you're all just BSing each other. It's terrible. It's not design. It's just farce. So one thing that you've got to really admit is we're all kind of about winging it. We're all not really sure. We don't have the answers. You've got to be humble and say, do you know what? I don't know about this page. I don't know what they want or why they're here or who they are, but we can find out. We have the tools and the technology to mine these visitors that are coming to tell us what we need to put in front of them. It's like when you listen to people and you understand, oh, that's the problem they want to solve. So I can say, oh, well, you can solve that in that kind of way. That's great. Marketing is not shouting at people with a megaphone, right? Marketing and optimization, not yelling at people or prodding people or tricking people, right? It's about shutting the hell up, listening, and then asking good questions and then repeating that exercise. So don't listen to your colleagues' opinions about the website. They make very little difference to how it performs. Listen to the customers and admit you're winging it. This is the first step in your Guessaholics Anonymous program. And that first step is stopping the denial that you have a problem here, that you know all the answers. Once you're over that step, everything becomes a lot easier here, and these session replay tools are pretty vital. If you're trying to optimize sites and you're doing it with analytics alone and you don't have session replay, I feel sorry for you because you're missing one of the foundational legs of all of this work. So get one of these tools installed. Anyone's budget can cope with one, and start mining it for useful information. Go after those gaps, right? Because the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. It's the passing off of you and your colleagues' assumptions and cherished notions and egos, right, as passing for truth from customers. And you have to stop this. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. You can get the slides from SlideShare. There's a link on here, and we're actually offering training courses on how to do this kind of analysis and how to use these kind of tools. If you're interested in some skills transfer for your team or individuals, please get in touch. Thank you very much.